Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's Organic Living Chiropractic class, in which we have our amazing nutrition magician.
Hey, guys.
The nutritional and integration specialist, Caroline Van Horn. And today she's going to bring up some really interesting topics. We're going to be talking today a little bit about health myths. A lot of stuff out there, a lot of information out there, all telling us, what's going to make us healthy and what's going to help us to stay healthy. But a lot of information. What happened? A lot of that info. Oh, here we go. Nope. A lot of that information. Sorry about that. A lot of that information out there is conflicting. So, how do we figure out what is right? Who's right? What's right? How do we know how to stay healthy and what to do to continue to improve our health? So we're going to go ahead and share our screen real quick and get started. Optimize and share. Here we go. Play.
Tad is watching Tad.
Here. And move this over here. All right. So, health myths.
Yeah.
So before we begin, do you want to tell people why this topic in particular interests you?
Yeah, so I get a lot of clients that are just generally confused. There is so much information out there, and we could spend endless amounts of time researching what other people have come to find works for them, or blanket statements about one thing working for everyone. So we'll talk about bio-individuality here in a second, but I think a lot of myths just come from that misrepresentation that something's going to work for everyone. And there's mixed information and mixed reviews, and really we just need to know what's true for us. So like I said, bio-individuality, this is a concept that's huge. It's what's congruent for you may not be congruent for someone else. Surprise! So one size does not fit all. That's why I don't really advocate for any one diet or plan for anyone, or even a supplement for everyone, because everyone is going to respond differently. It's not going to work the same way, and you're not going to respond the same way. So it's important to tune into the body and see what speaks to you, what helps you feel more aligned, more congruent, but it is not something for everyone by all means.
So there's no silver bullet?
No, unfortunately.
I got to think? Oh, man.
You have to feel, too.
Oh, think and feel? This is why we hire an expert like Caroline. I don't want to think and feel.
Other way, there you go. Okay, so just to give you an outline real quick, we're going to do 3 myths. And then at the very end, I'll give you a reflection on kind of the last one. So just so you kind of know where our time is going to be spent. So myth number 1 of 3 is the declaration, it's my genetics.
Not my fault.
Not me. That's the hopeless feeling that we all get, like, oh, my family members have this genetic problem, or there's a family history of this cancer, etc. And that's simply just not the case. So let's dive in and see why this is. So epigenetics is one of the fields that's been booming in the last 10 to 15 years. And it's all boils down to the study of the processes involved in the genetic development of an organism, especially the activation and deactivation of genes. So believe it or not, you have genes, but they can be switched on and off. And this is just a field that's growing and growing more and more every year. So I really want to share more of this with you guys. So to kind of start with, let's do some biology 101. And you'll kind of see, yes, we all love it. Well, no one paid attention when they went to school, so now you get
we're going to make it fun, don't worry.
Yeah, but I also want you guys to kind of tune into to all 3 myths and see what the common denominator is, and see if you can kind of hang with that. But the cell membrane, you have trillions of cells. So that membrane, that outer membrane that's nice and circular, is made of fats. It's called a phospholipid bilayer. And that's made of healthy fats that allows molecules to pass through. So it's information coming in, nourishing the cell, and then leaving. So the membrane depends on these receptor sites. So these receptors are like little antennas that pick up information from these little proteins. You can see right there that red portion of the picture is the protein, and it gives information to the cell to let things in, let things out. So it's actually an antenna that picks up on the signals to tell it what to do. So the protein site is what switches a gene or a genetic expression on or off. It's not that your genetic code changes. We all have the genes we're going to have, but it's the external influences that do have the impact. So that's what causes your genes to change. So we'll talk in a second about what the external influences are, but this is the interaction that creates the change. And yes, it's reversible in adulthood. You are never stuck, even if a gene is switched on or off, like you don't have to stay there in that space.
And just to remind everybody, what a gene does is it tells our cells how to make a protein. And proteins are, you can kind of think of them as the building blocks of our entire body. And so if a cell builds a type of protein in a certain way, our cellular machinery is going to work in a certain way. And if that cell expresses a different gene, if it turns one gene on and turns another gene off, then it will build a different type of protein that will act totally differently inside of our cells. So just a quick recap on that. But when we blame our genetics, basically that's kind of like having a new house built and then that house collapses and you're like, oh man, it's the blueprint's fault. Oh, that blueprint, oh man, it messed up my house. But we kind of forget that, oh yeah, there was like an architect that was involved. There was a whole bunch of workers that were involved. It's a lot more than just the blueprints. And our genes are basically the blueprints, but it takes somebody to read those blueprints. And it takes somebody to actually make those blueprints come into physical reality, into life.
So this is one of my favorite sayings. Genes load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. So really think about that for a second. If your genes have the instructions, your environment around you is what sets that into motion. So your environment is what signals that gene alteration or not. So not the gene. So what we want to kind of go over is your environment. What is that? It's your food, it's your water, toxins that are all around us, sunlight, your EMF frequencies or your EM frequencies, your relationships with people, your habits and your practices. Belief systems are a big part of that too. So it's not really, those are your external factors that we want to really think about. So saying that your genes is the problem is really giving a lot of your power away when you can, in fact, control your environment. You can decide what food goes in your mouth every day. You can decide to get some sunlight instead of watching TV. So those are habits and practices that we really want to dive into. But the methylation of DNA is that double helix is super sensitive to the environment. So I say methylation because that is super important for how those instructions get through. But family history, this is the main point. Family history doesn't truly define your genetic expression. There might be a lot of similarities, but think about the environment first before we just go to well, my mom had it, so now I have it. Think about maybe the belief systems that were similar. Think about the foods that might have been similar. Think about where you grew up that was similar. And, there's things like that might be more similar than the actual genetic expression being turned on or off. So don't give away your power. First, start with what you can control. So I really enjoy this book. I think I've mentioned her before, but Lynn McTaggart wrote a book called The Bond. And this was a great quote. So I'll read it to you guys. It's a bond exists between the blueprint within our cells and everything we connect within our world throughout our lives. Like subatomic particles, our physical body is not a discrete entity, but the end product of a relationship. super cool, you guys, to be considering all of this as a relationship dynamic. The ebbs and flows, the conversations that you have that symbolize a lot of different things, that create a lot of different things. So we are in relationship with our environment. We're in relationship with our bodies.
So you're saying that my relationship with myself right now builds my body for the future?
Absolutely.
Oh, what about my relationship with my friends?
Absolutely.
What about my relationship with my kids?
Yes.
What about my relationship with my parents?
Yes.
Oh, man.
It all matters.
Everything affects us.
But we are built for that. So what does help with a healthy genetic expression? So we kind of covered this a second ago, but sunlight, this is massive for your mitochondria, the powerhouse of your cells. It feeds and fuels it in ways that we're still discovering. There's probably thousands of benefits from just sunlight, not just vitamin D, but that is also amazing, but it triggers a cascade of other things. Healthy, clean spring water. Grounding and earthing, that's where your feet are making contact with the earth, with the ground. Mutually empowering relationships, not one that's siphoning. Evaluating old patterns and belief systems that need evolving. Some things are just needing to be transcended, especially right now in this time and space. We're being asked to really look at patterns that are maybe not for this current time. Organic, whole, natural foods, as close to nature as you can find them. And then parasympathetic states, which mean your relaxed state of being. You're resting, digesting, healing. So you can do those by meditation, just simply being, not doing, and then some breathing techniques. These will all create super healthy habits for healthy genetic expressions. And if you have a gene that's turned on that you may not want turned on, guess what? We can reverse that.
Turn it off. Come on.
No problem. Okay, so myth number 2. Inflammation is bad. Inflammation is a huge topic right now. We see it as this big enemy in our bodies, and that's the cause of everything wrong. And while there are some things that are kind of impact inflammation in negative and positive ways, I want to go over kind of the building blocks. So again, here's something to pay attention to. We're coming back to healthy fatty acids. These are just healthy fats. So I have listed here a few of them that like omega-3 and omega-6, we hear a lot about these, but they all turn into a cascade of other fats that are broken down differently, and they're utilized differently in the body. So they all impact the fluid and rigidity of cells. So it's all determined by your fat intake. So think about cells as nice, squishy little blobs. But if you are eating poor quality fats or rancid fats, which is unfortunately quite a bit out in our grocery stores and our restaurants, then those nice fluffy cells are actually going to turn weak and flaccid with very little information getting to come in and out of the cell. And if you eat healthy fats that are strong and close to nature, then that cell, all 1 trillion of them, will stay puffy and happy, free flowing with energy. And additionally, your heart and brain also love healthy fats. So these are just kind of the building blocks for inflammation. So we'll go on to the roles of fat in the body. So this is where healthy fat gives us our long, sustainable energy. It's like our deep burning embers of a fire. They stay really super hot and they create that energy to create warmth or sustainability in the body for a long time. So if you're going to go a long time without eating, some fat would be a good idea. So fat also comprises the outer layer of every cell. We talked about that. It also protects your organs, regulates your energy, helps absorb vitamins, especially the fat-soluble vitamins. So that's A, D, E, and K. It maintains your satiety.
That means, are you satisfied? Are you
hungry all the time? If you're hungry all the time, you're probably not getting enough fat. It also allows proteins to be utilized in the body. And then something a lot of people don't know is fat creates bile in your liver and then is pumped out through your gallbladder. And your gallbladder, with that bile, helps flush out toxins. So even though we live in an environment that might have some toxins, but if your gallbladder is healthy and your liver is healthy, then it can help remove all of that. And then that creates a very happy liver. And your liver has like 500 functions. So we want to keep that guy super happy and healthy. But the last one is what we're really here to talk about. It regulates inflammation in the body.
Whoa, that's right. Can you say that again?
Fat helps regulate inflammation in the body.
Now, I just want to remind everybody that the biggest killers in our society, we're talking cancer, heart disease, diabetes, degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, all of these diseases, every single one, are basically inflammation in certain parts of the body that has gone unchecked for too long. The major killer in our society is the inability to regulate the inflammation cycle in our body. And inflammation is actually good, but it's got to be regulated, and it's got to be regulated with fat.
Not so hard, is it?
And fat's the good stuff.
It is. It's like what gives your food the flavor. Why would we want to like make anything low fat? That's where all the good stuff is. So the inflammatory pathways, I'll boil down to what we call prostaglandin pathways. So these are hormone-like substances, and they're made from fat. So all of these pathways occur in most tissues in the body and most fluids. So it's all part of this huge communication system to keep cells healthy and to keep tissues healthy. So it's interesting that we want to like keep low fat or a diet of low fat. That was one of the biggest lies we ever heard in our health industry, was to have a low fat diet. So the body is holistic. It's not, we don't have just a muscular system or just a skeletal system. It all communicates with each other. And so it's part of this overarching communication system that we really want to acknowledge. Every system will speak to each other. So the main thing about this is that it controls inflammatory function. So the prostaglandin pathways, there's 3 of them. The pathways number 1 and number 3 are responsible for anti-inflaming, and pathway number 2 is responsible for inflaming. So you actually have 2 pathways to anti or undo inflammation. But what's interesting is that painkillers like ibuprofen or Tylenol, anything like that, actually inhibit all 3 pathways.
Oof.
So how are you going to get healing, right? So if those painkillers are simply telling your brain, hey, brain, don't feel this, and then the pain doesn't actually go away in your body, it just tells your brain to silence that response. But sometimes that's our like check engine light, right? Something needs to be looked at, something needs to be paid attention to in a way that may have to change something. That's why the pain is there, to signal us to do something different. So inflammation is actually really good. We need inflammation in order to heal, to recover, to repair. That's the pain sensation, is increased blood flow. That's what swelling is. Increased blood flow must go to that damaged or affected area. So it brings heat, it brings blood flow, and yes, that's the pain. But once it's inflamed, then the body says, okay, let's do some repair work, and then it can anti-inflame by coming to a new level of homeostasis, a return to health and to overall well-being. But it's the imbalance in those pathways that give inflammation such a bad rap. So the standard American diet, which is also termed the SAD diet.
And it is
very sad.
Oh.
It's typically super high in poor quality omega-6s. So those are fats you'll get from processed foods, refined sugar, your vegetable oils, soybean oils. All of those are super highly inflammatory to the body. So if you have an overwhelming amount of that, you can't possibly balance out the anti-inflammatory pathways enough. So that's why the balance is super key. You want to eat a variety of foods in order to have that correct balance.
So let me get this straight. Inflammation is very necessary for the healing process.
Yes.
And we live in a society that throws down anti-inflammatory drugs like they're candy.
Mm-hmm.
We have horrible fat that we eat, even though that's necessary to actually heal and turn off the inflammatory pathway.
Yes.
And we don't eat enough of that fat, even though it's horrible.
Right.
So does it make sense why the biggest killers these days are inflammation related?
Something to think about. So let's talk about good fats versus bad fats. So the main difference between good and bad is the way that they're processed. It's not in the actual inherent nature of the source of that fat. The exception to that rule being corn oil or canola, soybean oils. Those are like one molecule away from being plastic. They're so processed that they're denatured beyond anything you could ever do to help it. And it's very inflammatory and will clog your liver and gallbladder super fast. So be reading your labels, guys. Corn oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil is just, you want like natural fats. So eating fats that are found as close to nature as possible. Those are going to be your cultured grass-fed butters, lard, yes, believe it or not, coconut oils, raw olive oil, your foods like nuts, seeds, your vegetables cooked in saturated fats, and then small fish and crustaceans. Those are all high quality fats, and then along with some quality raised grazers.
Whoop.
Battery died. So myth number 3, this is one of my favorites, especially right now. So I call this one, germs, microbes, and viruses are bad. Oh my. Uh-oh.
Nope, don't touch it.
Okay. Pause.
There we go.
Okay, we lost it for a second. Okay, so that brings us to the microbiome. So this is the garden in the gut, as I like to call it. This is where your life flourishes within. And the definition of microbiome is a community of organisms, such as bacteria, fungi, and viruses, that inhabit a particular environment, and especially the collection of microorganisms living in or on. So we are not alone, you guys.
And in medical textbooks, this is actually being added in as an entire organ. And for most people, if we're really healthy, it's about a 5-pound organ that's along the lining of especially our digestive tract. But really, our microbiome is just about in every part of our body.
Mm-hmm. So I want you guys to think about this microbiome being a community. It's your garden, it's your ecosystem. And what do we think of when we hear the word community or ecosystem? So a lot of that is the symbiotic nature, right? So it's we benefit one another. One fuels the other, and then the other responds and fuels it. And sometimes there's a giving and a taking. We also, in communities and ecosystems, receive, we give, we share, we alter, we mutate, and then we evolve.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
So that means that we are a part of a co-creative process. There is a lot going on that's big and small. So it's going to fluctuate, but those are all natural, inherent processes. They're useful and they're purposeful, and there is a massive amount of intelligence that couples with it.
Not just yours, the intelligence of billions.
Lots of life going on in there. It's not just you. So there's those microbes in your garden are communicators. There's a lot happening at the vibratory level, and there's a lot being relayed through the frequencies of each of those different life systems that are happening within you. And so, who knows what's being communicated, but it's all a part of the big picture. It's all a part of you, and it's all impacting each other. So an ecosystem that is alive, and then it has impact. And that's all I think everyone kind of wants to have in their human life, is to have that impact in some way, shape, or form. And so the life in your gut is also contributing.
It's literally impossible to be alone. We always have our gut microbes.
They're our friends.
Yes. Here we go. Why is that not working? Okay, here we go.
Okay, so I found this picture online and I love it so much, but it's this brain that's kind of portrayed on this 2D image. and it's surrounded by all of these creatures, or what I would call the other life forms that are inhabiting our gut. And they're just having fun with the brain, but they're connecting to it.
They literally help to create your body.
And your mind. They're all a part of the whole picture. So there is this unique intelligence of the gut. And your gut actually has, kind of on the lower side, something called the Peyer's patches. And this houses 80% of your immune system. It's in the gut. I don't know where we usually think it is, but that's where we find it. And then something else that's extraordinary is that 90% of your serotonin, this is a neurotransmitter, but it focuses, or it surrounds the concepts of your mood, your focus, and your creativity. But it's actually not produced, all of it, in the brain. 90% is produced inside your gut lining.
And a lot of our psychotropic drugs to address things like depression and anxiety, a lot of them are trying to alter the serotonin here. But have we ever really thought about the serotonin down here?
90% of it? Whew. Yeah, but what are we doing to our gut? What are we putting in there? What is actually inhibiting it?
A lot of antibiotics. And the word biotic literally means life.
Anti-life.
And so anytime that we just run and go grab an antibiotic without really knowing, like, what are we taking it for? Is this like really necessary? Anytime that we run and take an antibiotic, basically what we're doing is we're just throwing a nuclear bomb into this organ, into our microbiome, and just killing everything.
Because why not?
Yeah.
Like, there's no harm, but there's a tremendous amount of harm.
Anti-life, and I promise you, you want more life.
Yes. What happens when you lose 90% of your serotonin or your immune system? There's a lot of communicating factors that are being depleted there.
Now, with that said, there is definitely a time and place for all drugs, especially antibiotics. There's some amazing benefits that can come if they're taken at the right time for the right reason.
But a lot of times they're just kind of tossed at something like a virus. When a virus you can't actually kill. So it's interesting how that would be just willingly or frivolously thrown at anything, any kind of complaint. But on that note, the gut and the brain are on an axis. We call it the gut-brain axis, and so the brain is actually what responds to the gut. The gut is the informer. It has the intelligence. I like to call it the first brain.
Yeah, as a chiropractor, I like to call it second brain.
It's out for debate. But the brain is the processor. Your brain is just the executor that says, okay, well, this is what we do with that information. But it's the gut that houses so much. That's kind of where we get our gut feelings too. There's a lot of intelligence happening there, and a lot of it's via vibration, like small wave patterns that are very discerning. But also these germs or microbes don't cause the issue. I think we make such enemies out of germs and microbes and other forms of life, but they're not the problem. They've been here the whole time.
And I want to unpack this just a little bit, because that's really what our society does. Whenever we get quote unquote sick, right, we run out and we go get a decongestant. But we forget that it's actually our body, it's our immune system that's producing all of that mucus in order to keep anything out, because our body's in the process of trying to fight something off. It's not the cold germ that causes a stuffy nose. It's actually our body.
It's your immune system.
Yeah, when our body's healthy. People that are immune compromised, like people with, the AIDS disease, their immune system doesn't do anything. So they get a cold, they get a bacteria, they get a virus, and they don't have any symptoms of being sick, and then they just die. So we have to recognize that these germs don't cause a cough. They don't cause a sneeze. They don't cause vomiting. They don't cause diarrhea. That's all of our body. That's all the intelligence of our body trying to use all of its functions in order to create that healthy balance so that we don't have too much of any one of these microbes or too little of any of these microbes. So just remember this time, the next time that you don't feel well and you go out to try to change those feelings, like lowering a fever. Whenever a fever and all of the other symptoms that our body produces are very important for helping our body actually create balance and getting to the place where we become well and healthier and stronger because we fought with these microorganisms and we created a new level of balance.
Yeah, and we actually do want our immune system expressing like that in that extreme way, you know, where you're just, you know, really kind of fell out of your normal life and you're having that like tons of mucus and cough and all of that. You want an expression because there's a lot of purging and detoxifying that goes into that. And a healthy immune response means that you are able and capable, but it does kind of need to flex its little immune muscles so that you are keeping invaders out that may not totally belong all of the time.
And the stronger and healthier your body is, the easier it's going to be to fight off these invaders. The easier it's going to be to actually integrate them into your system so that you can move forward being stronger. So it literally is, it's the soil more than the seed that determines if we're quote unquote sick or not.
Yeah, so just to kind of cover that last one again, it's not the microbes that cause the issue, it's the terrain of the gut that decides how it's impacted. So, and since we're kind of on that topic of soil, a lot of like our soil is depleted. And so speaking of the immune system of our natural environment, and we'll get to this in a second too, but the immune system for plants actually is in the soil. So if our soil is healthy and not depleted like it has been, then the plant can actually fend for itself. It can put off its own biochemicals to say, hey, I don't want you pests on me. But it's when these soils become super depleted that then certain strategies like herbicides or inorganic substances are sprayed in order to protect the plant. But let's think about that like in our own gut. It's the terrain that decides how we are guarded or protected from outside invaders that we don't really want living in us all of the time. So let's move on to the next part.
Well, what happens whenever we eat those herbicides and pesticides and put that into the terrain of our gut, since most of our serotonin, our feel-good chemicals are actually created in our gut, and we're eating all this stuff that's hurting our gut, does it make sense why we as a country in the United States of America takes the most antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications out of any country in the entire world, like multiple times over, or like 2 or 3 times the other countries? It's, whew.
It's wild. Oh, I think we missed one. Nope, no, we didn't. Okay. So just to cover very briefly the types of little living creatures that are within our microbiome, let's start with bacteria. So they're independent. They can eat and reproduce and grow their own little population, and they can multiply very rapidly, kind of like bunnies. They live and flourish in bacteria and can create their own. But B12, for example, for why this isn't bad, B12 is created, or lots of it, is created in the large intestines because there's a lot of good, healthy bacteria there. And it thrives and can make that vitamin there. Energy from your cells, or ATP from your powerhouse, your mitochondria, they have their own genome inherited from the mother, from a source of bacteria.
So we're taking a bunch of antibiotics as a country. Our digestive system is not feeling good.
The terrain isn't good.
B12 is very important for energy production.
But it's very deficient in a lot of people.
And our mitochondria that creates energy, they're negatively affected by all of this. Does it make sense why we're so fatigued as a country?
Fatigued and moody and anxious and depressed.
It's not bad.
Viruses. Okay, here's a big one. Viruses are not living.
Ooh, you can't kill them?
No.
Oh, it has to be alive to kill it. Huh.
It is actually, a virus is actually a DNA fragment that attaches to cells.
It's just information.
Yeah, it's not living. You can't squash it like a bug. You can't do anything to it. Cells that are used to inject more DNA. So essentially, a virus will just attach itself to a cell and inject itself so that it's like, hey, we do want more of this particular DNA, so we're gonna, stick ourselves in here. And then what you're actually experiencing when you're sick from a virus is that immune response, because that cell does eventually explode, and then it replicates that virus for a period of time. But your body does know how to handle that. So the sick feeling or the intense immune response is your body just those cells are rupturing, and then so that your body can handle it on its own. But this is the interesting part. This is a super rough count. There's no way to actually count all of this, but there's thought to be known right now 10 to the 31 viruses on the planet. So that is a 1 with 31 zeros after it, and we put in that atrocious number below. If you want to look at how to actually say that, I don't think we could say that.
No, there's actually not a name. That number's so big. The number's not, there's not a name for it, but there's more viruses than there are stars in the universe.
Yes.
In the entire universe.
10 million times more.
Yeah, and there's more viruses.
Yeah.
So, the big virus that has changed our world, or we've reacted to change our world to battle, this virus. The big thing that everybody's afraid of, really all of those symptoms come from what's called a cytokine storm, which basically is this extreme inflammation reaction that our body can't control.
And what do we need for inflammation?
Fat. And what kind? Do we have a healthy relationship with the fat in this country?
I don't think so.
And do we need a healthy gut?
Yes.
Yeah, to control that inflammation? And we don't at this country. So does it make sense why the United States has more deaths and more complications because of this now common virus than any other country in the world? Ooh.
It might be the terrain of our standard American diet.
Oh, so you mean I can't blame the virus?
Oh. So Zach Bush is a phenomenal researcher, but he's multifaceted. He's a medical doctor, but he's also deep into soil regeneration. I highly recommend checking him out. But he, in response to that virus number we just laid out for you, his comment is, well, now what are the chances that those guys are out to kill us? The answer is 0. If they didn't want us here, we would have never come as a species. And if they wanted to kill us, they would have killed us a long time ago.
A lot more of them than us.
Yeah. The fact is the microbiome is an ecosystem in which we play this tiny, tiny little niche.
It doesn't sound like he watches much of the mainstream media. He might know a little bit more than them, though, as a medical doctor.
Oh, man. Yeah. And there's fungi. We all kind of know about these guys. Plant-like organisms that naturally thrive in a variety of environments, including the gut. And most of them are very, very life-giving. And there's over 5 million species of these. And then parasites, we all have a bad rap for these guys too, but they're also life-giving. There's some that can be, very depleting to the gut if they're in there. But if you have a healthy terrain, they should not be a problem. But they help regulate normal cellular function, and there's over 300,000 species of these guys too. So, and Ted kind of touched on this a second ago, but what disrupts natural community? So one of those big ones is Roundup, or a substance called glyphosate, and that kills life on the plants, including life in your gut, because it's sprayed on the plants that you eat, unless you eat organic or grow your own, which would be ideal.
Because even with eating organic, you also have organic pesticides. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are a thing.
Yep. So if it's killing the smaller organisms on plants because the soil hasn't been regenerated and it's totally depleted and it's wiped out partially because of this glyphosate chemical, then why would you put it into your gut? Like all of the life is going to be wiped out. Your own little garden inside of your gut is going to be impacted. That's why there's a lot of gluten sensitivity or allergy or celiacs. A lot of that is not actually the gluten protein. A lot of it is just the amount that's sprayed on wheat is wild. I think they spray it 3 times. And the last time they spray it as a desiccant, which I think is to help dry it out so they can cut the wheat quicker, and then they can process it quicker. So all of that is going into your gut. So additionally, I do want to kind of note here that glyphosate chemical also tends to completely block 3 of the main neurotransmitters or amino acids for your neurotransmitters that make the feel-good feeling. So those are going to be tryptophan, phenylalanine, and tyrosine. Those are the 3 major building blocks for dopamine, for serotonin, for all kinds of happy feelings that we would get from our gut and our brain, but that's blocked by that glyphosate chemical. So be very conscious about eating organic, or ideally be growing your own food, but
go talk to your local farmers. Go check out the farmers market. Make some friends. Build your community, and really get to know what's being put on your food. Now, the cool thing with the glyphosate and the Roundup is that this information is becoming more and more widestream. I'm pretty sure the whole state of California has banned it. We just recently heard that Costco is now banning all of these products in their stores. There's quite a few countries, especially European countries, that have banned the use of these pesticides. Now, this company is based here in the United States. So guess which country has not banned it? And guess which country's government is actually buying a lot of this stuff to put onto government land and around schools and all of this other stuff, when we know it causes a whole list of problems, including, and this was proven in California, cancer.
Yeah, it's really kind of a strange cascade of events that goes on in that way. But additional disruptions are going to be synthetic fertilizers. That's hugely impactful. Antibiotics, we talked about that. That wipes out the good and the bad life. So yeah, there's sometimes where there's instances where that's really beneficial to really help the body out. But just remember, you're going to need to repopulate. And you can. I don't want you guys to kind of feel this hopeless feeling of, oh, I've had courses of antibiotics throughout my life and I'm just hopeless now. That's not true. No. You can repopulate.
But it does take a while.
Yeah,
it usually takes about a year for the average person to really focus on getting a lot of the good probiotics in after a round of antibiotics. So just mentally prepare yourself to be constantly focusing on your garden.
Also, excessive refined sugar. We kind of all know that sugar is, a depleter in general of health. It wipes out a lot of your minerals, which is vital for overall well-being. But lots of refined sugar creates an overgrowth of specific bugs that love sugar. Candida, I think, is one of them. So they will munch on that and then poop out toxins. So then you're kind of feeling inflamed from all of the toxic buildup. It'll back up your liver because it's having to deal with all of those toxins. And then you kind of feel just generally unwell. So a lot of people don't feel good after sugar because of that. Chlorine and fluoride in the water. Those are big disruptors of the gut as well. And there's some good filters out there now that filter those things out. So onto the hopeful part, how to repopulate the gut. So some of these might sound very strange, but if we're really connected to our body, we can really see how this is beneficial. But stepping barefoot on the ground, hopefully ground that's not, laden with fertilizer. Go find some natural, uninhibited grass or ground, and have those spores and microbes and dirt and life within dirt really enter your body through your feet. Your skin is porous and it is highly absorptive. So that is a huge beneficial way of receiving, repopulating bugs that way. And it's not like you're getting bugs into your body, but there is a connection there. Sunlight, again, this has a lot to do with regeneration. We are beings of light. We're made of light. We eat light grows food, and then we just eat slowed down versions of light via our vegetables.
Or we eat the grazers that eat
yes.
the vegetables for us. It's
yes.
my favorite way.
And they have to be grass fed or free range for that to be beneficial for you. That way they're breaking down the green or the chlorophyll, and then you get to experience the benefits of that light slowed down through an animal.
So go create community with some of the ranchers in
yes.
your area.
There's
really
co-ops.
know what you're putting into your body. Know that every little bit of food you really have a good relationship with. A good relationship with the person that not only making the food, but is also bringing it to you.
And kind of like Costco did with, kicking out the glyphosate or the herbicides, like there's a consumer-driven market for a reason. And so if you're really connecting to your local co-ops or farmers markets, and we connect with farms, things like that, that we can start to turn and shift the tragedy that is our food system. Like the battery-raised chickens and cows, like we don't want that in our bodies. But if we can have like happy animals, and we're connecting, we're bringing a reverence back to our food system and back to the table. And that's what's hugely missing. I think, in my personal opinion.
Go vote with your dollar.
Yes.
Dollars dollars buy the votes. That's just the truth.
Like what Costco did.
That's just the truth in our society.
Yeah. So some other strategies are to garden or really dig in the dirt with your kids. Ideally, again, without fertilizers or Roundup on the ground. But garden without gloves. Really dig in that way. Avoiding, and then when you buy your organic veggies or grow them, avoid scrubbing off all the dirt. Those dirt and those spore-based minerals and life are going to be really good for you. If you're going to take probiotics, spore-based is really good. You can also do the other types of probiotics, but you don't want to create too narrow of a population in your gut by taking the same probiotic over and over. So
variety is key.
Yeah, diversity. Rotate if you want, but don't create a monoculture or a very limited amount of information of that life. You want to really, ideally, get some things like fermented or cultured foods into your diet regularly. And it doesn't take that much. Just like a condiment size portion is what I tell my clients. So if you're going to get something like a fermented food such as sauerkraut, like a condiment size of that to start with is amazing. And there's billions of what would you call it? Little life forms that hugely benefit the gut. So, anything else before we dive in here? Those are our 3 myths.
Hope everybody recognize the importance of really questioning the information that we're given, especially by the quote unquote cultural authorities. We just have to recognize, and this is any individual's particular fault, but we just have to recognize that the majority of our science is actually driven by industry. It's driven by the companies and that make the money off of us buying their products. And if the majority of our cultural authorities are telling us about science that really is bought and paid for, there's only one solution, and that's for all of us to become citizen scientists, for all of us to take in information from both sides of every single debate, every single argument, every single conflict that we possibly can, for us to actually test things out, for us to do experiments on ourselves and in our lives to see not only what is true, but what's true for each one of us as a unique individual, because what's true and what works for Caroline doesn't necessarily work for me. It may not be the best thing for me. And the only way that we know is to experience.
That's the beauty of bio-individuality. One thing that happens to one person will never replicate itself in another. So having a reverence for your own experience is a huge value. So
now we're going to read some musings. something that came to Caroline and is very, very profound.
Yeah, I thought that this was a good time to kind of share on my, or a reflection, I guess, since we talked about the microbiome and the variety of life and non-life in and around us. So this was a something that I was inspired by, and I chose to reflect on it. So I wanted to share it with you guys. It's a paper, so bear with, and if it's kind of reaches this point of above your head, just kind of let the frequency or the information wash over you. Let it just be something that is in the space around you and doesn't have to make sense. But I did just want to connect with you guys and share it. So this is in reference to the beauty of a virus. So instead of looking at the perceived negative qualities about something in a way that questions not why it is bad, but ask instead, and how does it serve? Ask the question, how does it aid in survival, thriving, or evolution? How is it that it is or can be a good thing? Like a virus, for example, because to be a part of the planet is natural, inherent, useful, purposeful, and intelligent. They are a part of the whole system that works collectively to mutate, purge, evolve, and adhere to a deeper characteristic that goes far and beyond what you think possible. There are always consistent and never-ending discoveries for all life forms. Maybe the point is to let go of one way of being in order to form a new way of being, a more whole union. Let go of one genetic expression in order to have access to another one that's in more harmony with the current or even future environment. To address the underlying cause may seem like a good place to start, but it is actually the substance we call unity. To observe this from the highest place means to visually see it in a way that calls attention and focus in, to see within. Ask yourself, what are all the ways we tend to look out, externally, neglecting the inner self altogether? Consider all the ways we try to control everything around us instead of allowing ourselves to be changed. A virus is genetic information made up of substances that co-create, made of the same creative stuff as our DNA. What is so wrong with this picture? What is so vastly disturbing about this type of unity? One might ask themselves, all it takes to come to a place, in humanity and within ourselves, where there is a union that forms bonds so tightly that no substance can unveil it, crack it, or replicate it. It moves, replaces, adheres, and strengthens its form through other forms. No matter what passes through it or over it, it's going to change, it's going to evolve, to mutate, to stand its firm ground until no other form replicates it, and then it will continue on again. In newness, novelty, but seemingly the same. It is always changing. It is the human form in full expression, and it is perfectly natural. Once again, to share this human experience of, end quote, spreading a virus means we are offering within our state of being a very live and charged environment for it to flourish. But it means you are alive. We cannot cope with perseverance. We can only hope and then blossom from the status of fear that we are operating from. What if this is the sole benefit of becoming a host for such an avenue? To perceive our biggest fear and then to shed it gracefully. A mass removal of fear for the collective. We benefit each other by sharing this system that flourishes with each other. It is our community from the inside out. Sharing energy and information with one another is one of the best ways to gather at the microscopic level. Even at this level, we are sharing and benefiting those around us. It is not bad. Why to feel bad doesn't have to mean turmoil, death, and the opposite of unity. Let unity happen. Allow it to encompass the masses by releasing all we call prevention and flow with the nature of being.
That's some pretty powerful stuff. That's definitely a very different perspective.
Very different.
On viruses, and that's what we need. That's what we need for growth. We need not only new information, which is literally what a virus is, but we need to be able to process that information differently. We need to be able to look at it differently through different lenses to understand it, to figure out how to use it. Everything has a value and everything has a benefit. There's a lot of research out there on the benefits of being exposed to a virus. Give you one example, the chickenpox virus. What our body does whenever it's able to move through and find a balance with this, it stores that in our nerve roots along our spine. And people that have had a healthy response and exposure to chickenpox, they actually show a significantly less likelihood of developing certain types of brain cancers. We actually use this virus as a protective mechanism to prevent brain cancer. So all of those microorganisms out there, all of those things that we think are bad, just recognize there's always a time and a place for everything. The question is, can we develop a deep enough relationship with it to be able to figure out when that right time is, when that right place is, when that right reason is, instead of trying to live in fear, which fear is based on keeping things the same. Life is based on growth and change. They are two very different directions, and it's up to each one of us to make a conscious choice. Are we going to jump ahead? Are we going to leap forward? Are we going to move into change, embrace life? Or are we going to try to resist the only constant in the universe, which is change, just because we feel afraid? Any closing thoughts?
No, and that's something that my intention was, just even to hold the potential of a different perspective or multiple perspectives at once. You can think the normal thoughts that the majority have, or just hold a glimpse or a quick glance at something different, and just so that there's the potential there to see things from different angles that benefits everyone.
So we want to thank everybody for joining us today. This was a labor of love by Caroline. So we really want to appreciate her stopping in and filling us with so much light, so much love, so much wisdom. Please feel free to contact Organic Living Chiropractic. Check out our YouTube page and subscribe. Check out our Facebook page and like it. Send us a message. Email us, organiclivingchiropractic@gmail.com. You can talk to Caroline specifically. You want to give them?
Yeah, I'm here at Organic Living a lot as well. My email is biologicnutritioncenter@gmail.com. But I also have some business cards up here if you guys are ever in the office.
So thank you all for joining us. We love you, and we look forward to more relationship, more community somewhere out in the field.